Alrighty. Welcome everybody to course planning, a part of the Career Readiness Series. Remember that the Career Readiness Series is a weekly event that ACM hosts each week. Each week we cover different concepts regarding either your professional careers or your academic careers. Today we're going to be talking about course planning, exactly what it is, what are some different parts you guys should be accounting for, and especially since registration has opened. Most of you guys probably have registration within the next few weeks. Hopefully no one has already registered. That should only be like the seniors right now. But with that being said, let's go ahead and let's get started. Oh, and I guess a quick introduction to myself. I'm Divyank. I'm the Professional Development Chair for ACM. Basically, my job is to make sure that your professional career looks good. So if you guys have anything regarding like professional development and perhaps like academic development, come to me. I will hopefully be able to answer your questions. And again, I also do like resume reviews and portfolio reviews. So if you guys want me to check that out, and when I say portfolio, it means like either your GitHub, your LinkedIn, or perhaps, if you guys have personal websites, things like that, I'm definitely open to check that out. All you need to do is just send me a message on Discord with whatever you want me to review, and then we can go from there. Yeah. So with that being said, let's get started with course planning. So what are a few key ideas that we're going to be covering today? We'll get started with how to structure your schedule. So making sure that you are accounting for, what are some hard classes and what are some easy classes, making sure that you don't overload yourself in one particular quarter, right? You guys want to make sure that you guys have pretty even workload, not only throughout the quarter, but also throughout all the years that you guys are going to be here. And also, what are some ways to prepare for registration? I'm sure most of you guys have heard horror stories regarding registration. People aren't able to get their classes, or perhaps when they are trying to apply, the classes are filling up really quickly, or perhaps like the registration portal is crashing, right? So we'll talk about a few ways that you guys can avoid that and kind of make it a more seamless process for you guys. And we'll also, as I mentioned before, we'll talk about some classes that are considered either difficult in content or perhaps just a little bit heavier in the workload, right? So it may not be difficult, but perhaps just requires a lot of time and effort to be able to succeed in that class. And we'll also talk about a 4-year plan and how exactly that works out and how you can personalize it using what's already been provided by UCR and adjusting that so that it fits your personal requirements, because each individual will have a different set of classes that they're taking right now. They will have different credits that they may or may not have already, and that will kind of alter how you guys are going to be taking your courses in the future, right? And on top of that, we will also be considering or talking about some ways that we can cut some of the required classes, right? So how many of us are taking Engineering 001? Okay, cool. So a lot of us, right? So I'm not sure if the professor has mentioned it already, but there are a few breadth courses that cover quite a few requirements. So we'll be going over where you guys can find the exact list, see which one covers what classes and how you guys can kind of get out of those requirements. Any questions there before we move on? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead. Let's move on then. Okay, so we'll get started with a quick introduction as to what exactly course planning is. Okay. So we first kind of come on to the concept of like, why is course planning important, right? It kind of seems like something that we can do kind of on the spot, right? When registration comes, and it doesn't exactly seem like something that we should be investing time in, right? However, it's quite the opposite, especially with any engineering major. A lot of your classes are going to be difficult, right? So it's very important that you guys are able to balance out that workload and be able to ensure that you guys aren't burning yourselves out one quarter and then all of a sudden in the next quarter you're only taking GEs. Everyone know what GEs means, by the way? Yeah, general education classes, right? So that is something to consider, making sure that you guys balance that out so that you take some CS classes or maybe some more like difficult classes and then some easier classes so that you guys don't overwork yourselves. Also gives you a quick way to analyze your workload for the future, right? So if you guys are considering perhaps like part-time jobs or other like opportunities, either within clubs, perhaps officer positions or things like that, it gives you an idea as to how much time you're going to have available during that said quarter. So based off of that, you guys would be able to perhaps commit to certain responsibilities and duties or perhaps decline them based off of what your schedule is going to look like. On top of that, a lot of the CS classes that you guys will be taking will kind of be a part of a series, right? When I say series, I mean some classes will require you to take other classes before them. So kind of like prereqs, right? So for example, if we take the 10 series, right? You can't take CS10C without taking CS10B, and you can't take CS10B without taking CS10A, right? Obviously, credits change that up, but this is kind of like the first series that you guys run into, right? So making sure that you guys don't run into that issue with your later classes, right? Because with your later classes, as you guys go or get closer to graduation, it's going to be very difficult if you guys haven't accounted for these prerequisites beforehand, since you guys are going to be trying to shove all those prereqs all at the same, like 2-3 quarters in your last few years. It also gives you a good idea as to what classes you guys want to take. A lot of this freedom will come through like technical electives. So mostly, I think in your junior to senior years, you guys will have the options to take technical electives, and these electives are going to be more geared towards certain industries within computer science, right? So you guys may be more interested in perhaps like databases, machine learning, or perhaps like web development, full stack development, things like that, right? Obviously, those classes are going to be up to you guys which you guys want to take, but it is kind of important to know, kind of have an idea which one you guys want to take and perhaps when it's being offered, right? Because not every class is offered each quarter. So it is important to keep in mind that if you guys are interested in a class, making sure that it lines up with your schedule in case you guys have multiple classes you guys want to take and they're only offered once. In addition, we will also be talking about like course availability. Each course isn't available, as I mentioned, every quarter. This doesn't only apply to technical electives. There are times when core classes, so for example, like, what are some core classes? 111 is offered every quarter. Let's say like the 40 series for physics, right? 40B isn't being offered right now, I think, right? So things like that, right? But perhaps if you needed 40B and you were going to graduate, I don't know, like next quarter, right? Then that becomes something that you should have accounted for before, right? Because then if you take 40B next quarter, then you have to take 40C later on, right? So try to avoid those conflicts beforehand. In addition, how many of us know what senior design is? No one. Okay, that is okay. So senior design is essentially like a capstone project that you guys will be taking, hopefully in your senior year. And based off of what senior design it is, there are two kind of main senior design categories. There is CS 178A plus B. That is a 2-class series. And in that class series, you guys get to essentially develop whatever you guys want for your project. Again, this is going to be kind of similar to CS 100, where you guys have a group project with 4 to 5 people that you guys were working with across for a whole quarter rather than just a few weeks, right? And with 178A and B, it's going to be actually 2 quarters, right? And the other category is working with the group for only 1 quarter. However, for those, they are going to be more tailored towards certain parts of computer science, right? So perhaps you may be interested in taking an AI senior design project, right? So that simply just means that the project you're going to be making is going to be perhaps like an AI or machine learning project, right? And obviously AI isn't the only one. There are multiple other ones. There's databases, operating systems, software engineering, quite a few other ones. However, these are not offered each quarter, right? There are some that are perhaps only offered like once every 2 years. For example, software engineering is sometimes only offered during the summer, right? So that is something that you guys have to account for, is if you guys are interested in the software engineering one, how would that fit into your schedule, if at all, or perhaps would a different option be more feasible for you guys, right? Any questions there? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead. Let's move on then. Okay, so how many of us have looked at the 4-year plan provided by UCR? Okay, cool. So most of us, yeah. So if you guys don't know already, UCR, this applies for every major. We'll go through quite a few majors, 4 of the common majors for like computer science and like its derivatives. But UCR provides a 4-year course plan that kind of walks you through the different courses. It's kind of hard to read the individual courses, but the way it's divided is each row represents a year. So you have like freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year. And then each column represents a quarter, right? So you have fall, winter, and then spring, right? And then there's like 3 to 4, I guess, like bullet points for each section. And they're just going to be telling you like an advised class that you can take, right? Usually these classes also account for like workload. So if there are harder classes, they kind of account for that and recommend that you take perhaps an easier technical elective or perhaps a GE during this time, right? Obviously, most people usually may or may not follow this, right? However, it is a great starting point to kind of map out what classes you do need to take, right? Because remember that there are some core classes that are required regardless for you to take before you can even graduate as a CS major, right? And then it also covers breadth requirements. We'll go more into detail about the breadth requirements because that's kind of a separate section that applies to not only like just computer science majors, but also just all BCOE majors as a whole. Any questions here? Yeah.
So it means they provided like all required courses to graduate, which means if you take everything listed on here before the last quarter of the 4th year, you can graduate early.
Yes. So keep in mind, this isn't like a complete plan. So a lot of these, I don't know if you can read it, but like at the bottom, oh wait, let me go here. So like right here, it doesn't actually tell you what technical elective to take. Rather, it just says techie, right? And in other cases like here, it'll just say breadth, right? Which just indicates take a breadth course, but it won't tell you which one, right? So that's kind of up to you guys to determine which breadth courses to take, right? And we'll go over that in more detail as to how exactly that works out. But essentially, if you did follow this schedule exactly, or perhaps, you know, even like a few changes, maybe you swap classes and whatnot, you would still be able to graduate within 4 years. And obviously, if you finish earlier, then that just simply means you're going to graduate a quarter or two earlier. Yeah. Any questions there? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead. Let's move on then. Okay, and then the same thing applies for CSBA. How many of us are CSBA majors in here? 2 of us? All right. Yeah. So your course plan is going to look very similar to the computer science one. There's just going to be a few changes, mostly in your 3rd and 4th years, where you guys are going to be taking more business classes to kind of relate to like the business application side of your degree, right? However, the start is mostly going to look the same, either if you are a CS major or a CSBA major, right? And if we go on to the next slide, I think it should be computer engineering. Yeah. How many of us are CE majors in here? Okay, 2 of us. Cool. Yeah. So once again, the first 2 years mostly will look the same. There are a few changes in terms of like perhaps when you'll be taking physics, and then I think there's also some chemistry requirements as well. And then usually in your 3rd and 4th years, that's kind of more so when you start to specialize within your field, kind of determine what field within that major you want to go into, right? Because we all understand that if, you know, we still major in computer science, that doesn't exactly mean we are ready for each job, right? Within the industry, within computer science, there are multiple fields that we can go into, right? We could go into security, full stack development, mobile development, infrastructure, DevOps, things like that, right? Everyone understands that? Yes? Any questions? Okay, cool. And then the last one we have here is data science. How many data science majors do we have? Where's David? Raise your hand. Aren't you a data science major?
Yeah. Yeah. So
how many data science majors do we have in the room? Raise your hand if you're a data. Okay. Well, anyways, data science will also look very similar to computer science for like the first 2 years. And once again, your 3rd and 4th years are going to be more specialized towards the data science and also more so like on the statistics and like mathematical side of things. Yeah. Okay. All of these course plans, they are also online. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk about where you guys can find these if you guys want to reference these later on. So if you guys just search up whatever your major is and like UCR 4-year course plan, you guys will find the link. One thing to keep in mind is try to go from the official UCR website rather than through a direct link, because they do update this quite frequently. and the UCR website will always have the most updated one. So for example, for computer science, there's like a 2021 version, a 2020 version, and also like a 2018 version. And there are very subtle changes between each of those versions. However, those subtle changes also means that it will change your overall course schedule, right? So just keep that in mind when you guys are viewing these schedules. And this doesn't only apply to computer science. It also applies to data science, computer engineering, and CSBA majors as well. Your curriculum will slightly change between the years as perhaps, new requirements are being added in, or perhaps requirements are being lifted from your major, yeah? And then this is the direct link if you guys wanna look at the course plans. It also has the course plans for all majors within BCOE. And if you guys aren't BCOE students, you guys can just search up, again, the same, like whatever your major is for your course plan UCR, and UCR will provide you with a different link that will still take you to a 4-year course plan for your specified major. And then there is also another link regarding course offerings. So remember how we were talking about like technical electives, right? And how sometimes they're only offered during certain quarters, right? So with this second link, it takes you exactly to that spot, and we'll actually go ahead and visit it right now, just so you guys can see what exactly we're talking about. So if we just go to UCR CS course offerings, it should be the first link for everyone. And then this is what it looks like, and it'll update each year. But this only applies for undergraduate course offerings, by the way. So if you're a master's student, that's quite tragic. But what you guys can see is you guys can see all the different classes that CS majors are required to or are offered, right? You guys are not required to take every class. So keep in mind when you guys are going through this, right? But for example, for engineering 001, notice that there is only one offering, which is fall, so right now, and it tells you who the professor is going to be for that class, right? And the same applies to, if we go ahead and look at perhaps like the 9 series or the 10 series, probably the classes that you guys are mostly taking, you guys should be able to see the class that you are taking, who your professors are, and when it's being offered, right? So for example, let's go ahead, let's take a look at some classes that aren't offered each quarter, right? If we take a look at CS 110, web development, right? Notice how it's only offered during the spring, right? And it's not offered by in the fall or winter, right? So in a situation like this, we would have to account for this class only being taught in spring and have to adjust our schedule as such, right? Because if we try to register for web development next quarter, it's not going to happen, right? And you can't like email your advisor and be like, hey, I'm really interested in taking this class. I'll be graduating next quarter too. Is it possible for this class to be moved earlier on, right? There's tons of logistical problems with that. So try to keep this in mind. So you guys can use this to plan out, your winter and spring quarters if you guys haven't already. And it's in a pretty exhaustive list with every single CS class in here. So keep that in mind. But yeah, any questions on this website? Okay, and while we're at it, we'll also go ahead and take a look at this BCOE majors list. So if we just come to like the BCOE majors link that I put up, you'll see it's just going to specify your degree requirements, your major requirements, and then here's where you guys can see all of your suggested course plans, right? So for example, here, if we just check out computer science, we'll see the exact screenshot that I had before, but you guys can go ahead, print this out if you guys want, and notice how before, it was a little bit blurry, but for the like techies and breadth courses, it will simply just say like technical elective or just breadth course, right? However, it won't kind of give you a detail like what classes to take. And on the next page, there's actually a list of all the various technical electives that you guys can take, right? And the two resources to kind of use hand in hand would be kind of this list of technical electives and also this offerings or course offerings. So you guys can cross-reference which one you guys are interested in and then check when that's being offered, right? And plan your schedule accordingly. Any questions on these two resources before we move on? Okay, cool. Okay, so then we come on to how do we make a 4-year plan, right? So for creating a 4-year plan, there is no special platform required, right? It's simply for your personal understanding, right? You're not going to be sending this 4-year plan to anyone, right? Perhaps you could share it, with your friends. Maybe if you guys want to like take classes together, which is completely fine. Or perhaps you want someone to review it. But the overall objective is it's for your personal understanding, right? It's for you to understand when you perhaps plan to take those classes and when they're being offered, right? So this is an example of like mine. It's not flushed out completely, but you can just kind of see like the format, right? Notice how it follows the format of like the suggested course plan that we showed before, right? Where we have each row represents a year, and then each column represents a quarter, right? Obviously, the suggested course plan doesn't show summer classes, right? So if you guys are free for the summer and perhaps want to like knock out maybe some CS classes or some GEs, this is also a great opportunity to be able to add that in and kind of keep track of that, right? And in this case, as I moved on within, like my academic career, each time I kind of like completed a class, I would mark that with green, meaning that I have completed this requirement, and that if, perhaps I need this class for some other classes, I know that I have that finished, right? And when I register, I would kind of mark them with yellow to indicate that I will be taking these classes in the upcoming quarter, right? But since I haven't registered, there's no guarantee that I will be able to get these classes, right? Yeah, but the overall goal is just to be able to list all the various classes that you guys are going to be taking. So notice how now I haven't exactly said like technical elective in most cases. Instead, I actually specified the technical electives that I want to take, right? And perhaps maybe when I want to take them, right? And there is a certain number of technical electives that you guys have to take. I think the number is 7. Yeah, 7. Or yeah, 6 to 7 technical electives. And I just put like an asterisk to indicate to myself that, hey, this is a technical elective, this is not a core class, right? So kind of just to be careful as to when this class is going to be offered and when it isn't, right? And then I also did it for humanities. Obviously, I missed a spot, and I have like just social here, right? Just to indicate to myself that I need some sort of social science class, and I need to figure that out very soon, right? And then obviously, as the quarters will go on, I will be updating my own course plan. And as registration comes on, I will obviously perhaps need to make some changes, either because classes have been filled up, so I cannot use the schedule that I had planned out for, and maybe swap out a few of the classes and essentially kind of like redo my entire course plan each quarter, right? It is a tedious process. However, it is also a required process, right? Because it is better to be super like organized about it rather than trying to figure out what you want to take last minute while classes are filling up really quickly. Yeah. Any questions there? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead. Let's move on. How many of us have made a term plan? Okay, how many of us know what a term plan is? Okay, cool. So for those who don't know, a term plan is simply kind of like pre-registering for a class, right? As you guys all know, the class schedule has been opened, right? So you guys are able to view the available classes for winter 2023, and you guys are also able to see how many seats are open, right? Both for the actual class and perhaps if this class is already full, you guys are able to see how many people are in the wait list for it, right? And based off of that, you guys can make your class schedules off of that, right? And if you guys haven't already, I recommend creating a term plan. This way, what you guys will be able to do is when your registration time does come around, instead of having to manually go through and find each class, instead what you guys can do is simply upload your term plan to your registration site and just upload that and click register, and you'll be done within like 30 seconds, right? So you guys won't have to really worry about actually looking for classes and having to worry of like, oh, this class is being taken when you are registered, right? Instead, it will be a very quick process, and hopefully the class doesn't fill up within the 30 seconds that you have been assigned, right? But in order to be able to access that term plan and be able to create it, how many of us know how to get to our web? Okay, cool. So that's everyone. So our web is essentially your student portal. And once you guys log in, this is kind of what your dashboard is going to look like. You guys will first click on to registration. And then on the next slide, once you guys click onto registration, on the next slide, we'll have this is the page that shows up. And then from here, if you guys have your registration ticket opened, then obviously you guys would go to register for courses, which is obviously blocked to students only. However, this last option here, term plan, is where you guys can create your actual term plans and later on use that for registration, right? At the same time, there's also the schedule of classes. So if perhaps you don't want to make a term plan just yet and you just want to see what classes are being offered, you can check that out as well, right? And the main advantage to a term plan is you're able to check out time conflicts, right? A lot of the classes that are going to be offered, sometimes there will be time conflicts, right? Like they will be offered, however, they may be overlapping, right? Maybe lecture is overlapping, or perhaps your labs and discussions are overlapping, right? And you guys won't be able to register if you guys have any time conflicts, right? So it's a great way to be able to see, even though your classes are being offered, is it a possible combination for you to come up with that, right? And obviously, if it isn't, perhaps is there a different lecture or a discussion section that you can attend such that you don't have those time conflicts, right? And it's a great way to kind of experiment with your schedule. Also think about your commitments, like perhaps do you want your classes to be primarily in the morning, primarily in the maybe like afternoon or in the evening, and kind of base your schedule off of that, right? Any questions there? Okay, cool, let's go ahead, let's move on. And then once you guys actually get to the term plan, you'll just be met with this. From here, you go on to just select the current quarter, so winter 2023. And then from there, it'll kind of give you essentially what the registration page is going to look like. And you guys will be able to create your term plan. You'll be able to see and experiment with all the various classes that you guys want to work around with, right? Doing this directly in registration does actually have a negative impact if you guys try to create a term plan within registration. It is a very small thing, so it may not bother a lot of you guys, but it is something to keep in mind. Every time you guys register for a class and then remove it, you guys are still charged for that class. You guys are charged, I think, approximately $4 per registration, right? So even though you may only have 4 classes for that quarter, but during registration, you're moving around a lot, adding classes, deleting classes, moving around, discussing sections and whatnot, and pressing register a ton of times. Each class that you dropped, even though you registered for it, you will be charged for it, right? So just keep that in mind. Yeah. Yeah, $4 per class. Yeah, it's not much, but again, it's just something to keep in mind. Obviously, don't go through the entire catalog and press register, but something to keep in mind. Yeah. Any other questions?
You said it applies to the term plan on our web?
Yeah, so the term plan doesn't have that consequence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is only for registration, right? So this $4 fee is only for registration.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead. Let's move on there. Okay, so kind of going on to just the general gist of how to prepare for registration, right? How many of us have registration within the next week? Okay, 2 weeks? Okay, cool. So I guess that's freshman standing. And then 3 weeks, or is 2 weeks the end? All right, okay, so I assume 2 weeks is the end of registration. If you guys haven't already, go ahead, create a 4-year plan. Obviously, I say 4-year in quotes because some of you guys may be graduating early, and that's completely fine. It may be perhaps like 3 years and 2 quarters, maybe 3 years. That's completely up to you guys. But 4-year plan, just go ahead, create it just so you're able to map out all the classes you guys want. And if you guys haven't already, make sure you guys go ahead and create a term plan for the upcoming quarter and check for class availability. So as registration is going on currently, although you guys may have made your term plans, maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, you can't assume that that term plan will still be accurate, right? There will be times when the classes fill up on your term plan and you will have to find a new class, right? So you'll have to update your term plan. Usually I would recommend maybe like the day before that you actually register. This way you kind of have the most up-to-date information, right? Or maybe perhaps if your registration time is kind of late in the day, then maybe doing it the morning of the same day, right? This way you run into the least amount of problems when actually registering, because worst case, you don't want to go into registration and find out that your term plan has all of your classes full, right? So that's something that you guys want to avoid. So just make sure that you guys double check your term plan maybe the night before you guys register. And if there are any issues with it, that you guys fix that immediately. So the next day you guys don't run into any issues. And then obviously ensure that all your prerequisites are met. I think with the term plan, I don't think there's any logic checking for this. However, for registration, it will happen. So when you guys are checking out the classes that are available, there is a certain section that is like labeled prerequisites, and we'll take a look at that as well. But it'll tell you all the prerequisite classes that you need, as well as the grades that you need for that class. Usually the grades are just like, as long as you pass the class, you're good to go, right? So just keep that in mind. And some classes do require instructor approval. Usually, I don't think that will apply to a lot of the freshmen here. However, if that is your scenario, make sure that you guys have that approval beforehand. This way, you guys aren't fighting for approval when you guys are actually registering. And last but not least, obviously, know your registration date, right? So know the exact day and time that it will open up, right? Because keep in mind, tons of people are going to be registering at the same time as you, and probably also for the same classes, right? So you don't want to be registering super late, right? So keep that in mind. Any questions on this? All right, let's go ahead. Let's move on then. Okay, so then we come on to how to register, right? Same concept as we kind of walked through before, where we just go to our web, click on registration, and then on the next slide, you guys will be greeted with what happens when we click on registration. And before we went to the bottom right-hand corner, except this time we're going to go to the top left-hand corner, which is the register section. And then from there, we'll be able to upload a term plan, or if you guys haven't, then you guys will be able to manually add the classes in as well. Yeah, so let's go ahead. Let's go to the next slide. So let's go ahead. Let's talk about some difficult and heavy classes. What are some classes that you guys have heard are either difficult or super heavy in terms of workload? All right, CS 141. What's the title of the class?
Intermediate data structure.
Okay. Any other classes? I want to hear from the freshmen. Well, what are your impressions? Yeah. CS 111. That is one of the harder classes as like your entry into upper divs. Any other classes? Yeah.
In general, upper divisions.
Yeah, that too. In general, upper divisions as well. Any other classes? Any particular classes? Oh, yes, Andre.
The physics series.
Yes, the physics series, because we do be computer science majors, huh? Luckily, the CSBA majors skip out of it. So this is only a concern for CS and CE majors. And I think data science also skips out of it.
No.
Oh, they do. Oh, that's wild. Yeah, so I guess data science majors also have to take it. Any other classes or perhaps series that you guys have heard are difficult? No? Oh, yes, Andre. What is another class?
The calculus series.
Oh, yeah, 10, huh?
9 and 10.
Okay, I guess.
Wow.
I guess like 9C, Math 9C is kind of considered a weeder class here. Hopefully we are not being weeded out by it, but people have taken it, people have passed it, so it is fine. I guess the English 1 series as well. Any other classes?
We're talking about a time-consuming class, 180W.
Oh yeah, so 180W, another writing class. Anything from the freshmen? I want to hear it from the freshmen. Have you guys heard of any hard classes? Yeah.
I know there's like a teacher who's not. Her name's like Elaine.
Dude,
God.
that's wild. You would be correct, but it is also subjective. But yeah. Any other classes? Yeah. To what? It doesn't have. Maybe it is a class you guys are taking, or perhaps a class you guys have heard of either maybe from your friends or other people who have taken the class.
I heard that biochem is super hard, but,
Biochem?
yeah.
Yes. I don't think a lot of CS majors take biochem,
Yeah,
but
that's about our question.
yeah.
142.
What is 142, Rodrigo?
Like the advanced algorithm.
Yeah, so that's kind of like 141 or building upon 141, which is already a hard class. Yeah. But with that being said, let's go through a more thorough list of it. So these are the most notably hard classes. Obviously, the list is going to be subjective, right? So kind of depending on perhaps on your professor or perhaps just how interested you are within the subject, you may or may not find these classes difficult, right? So first off, we have like CS 111, that's discrete structures. This is kind of one of the first upper div classes that you guys will probably find hard. The other classes like CS 100, but that class is pretty okay. And personally, I think it's light work. So hopefully that isn't too big of an issue. And then later on, probably in your like late sophomore to junior years, you guys will be taking CS 141. That's the algorithms class that we were talking about before. That is also a notably difficult class. And then later on, also, you guys have CS 150. This is all like junior level classes, probably, where you guys will talk about like theory of automata and formal languages. What it is, honestly, I don't know. I'm taking the class right now. It's a bunch of lines and circles, and they connect, and that's about it. Yeah, and then there's a compiler design, CS 152. Again, another like junior level class. And CS 171, this is actually a technical elective. So if you guys are interested in machine learning and like data mining, this is one of the classes that you guys can take.
I've heard a lot of students say that it's one of the professors specifically. So on the other one, on the lexicon, is like everyone knows it. It's like sometimes it depends on the professor.
Yeah, that kind of goes for actually all the classes on this list. Your class difficulty is going to kind of be based on how the class is structured. And some of the classes, it is the content itself, right? It doesn't matter how good or bad of a professor you get. The class will be difficult, right? But sometimes, professors definitely do make a huge difference in how your overall class experience will be.
So if I see if the professor is to be announced until the day before I register, it's just unlocked if I get a good professor.
That's usually rare for CS classes. I haven't seen that a lot. Usually that will only apply, I think, like lower div math classes. But usually lower div math classes, you don't have to worry about too much. But at least for CS classes, usually the department's really good with specifying who the instructor will be. Very few times you won't know. And you as I mentioned before, the course offering that we checked before, right? It'll tell you who the professors are for that class, right? So you can always cross-reference that as well. And yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you have a list of like the easy versus the hard professors for these classes?
No, because the problem is the list is gonna be like subjective, right? Some people like certain styles of teaching, right, compared to others. So for example, some may like the harder professors because of the way they have structured their class, while some may not. But yeah, however, to kind of go off of your question, I think you were going to mention it, the mega thread. Yeah. So do you want to finish it? Okay. Yeah. So there is a big database of classes that tons of other students have taken, and they kind of rate the class from 0 to 10. 0 being like super easy and 10 being like super hard. I will also share a link to that, and they kind of give comments as to perhaps like who the professors were for that class, kind of what their experience was with the class, how it was structured, perhaps some things to be like careful of, and things like that. But yeah, any other questions? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead. Let's move on then. Okay, so then we come on to cutting classes. Cutting classes is not for cutting lectures. That is something that is up to your own discretion if you guys want to skip lecture. I do not recommend it, but at the same time, sometimes you can learn faster if you don't go to lecture. You didn't hear that from me though. So keep that in mind. But moving on. When we are talking about cutting classes, I'm talking about GEs, right? So if we go on to the next slide, these are kind of your overall BCOE breadth requirements, right? No matter what major you are, either that be CS, CSBA, CE, or data science, you guys will have to take 3 humanities classes, 3 social sciences, 1 ethnicity, and 2 depth courses, right? So that is a total of 9 classes, right? And if we kind of plan that out, right, 9 classes is about maybe like 2 to 3 quarters at UCR, right? That is all a lot of work, right? However, if you plan your courses correctly, you can actually change that 9 to a 6. Keep in mind, that is not always guaranteed, right? This is where a lot of planning has to come into play, making sure that if you find those classes, take it immediately, right? There is a very high chance that other people also have the same mindset, that they want to reduce the number of classes that they're taking, right? So for example, has Lependu went over this in Engineering 001 yet? Okay, yeah. So you guys know that some classes, they cover like humanities and ethnicity, right? That's usually the main combo that happens, right? Yeah, okay. So, and then there's also classes that cover like humanities or like social science plus depth courses as well, right? Do we all know what depth courses are? How do we classify a depth course? Yeah.
Depth course basically like subdivision.
Can you number them?
101 to 1 to like 199.
Anything in the 100s is considered a depth course, right? If how many of us know how course numbers are kind of made within UCR? Okay, not a lot of us. That is okay. So classes starting from like or ranging from 0 to 99, those are considered lower div classes, right? So for example, CS 10A, 10B, 10C, right? Those are all lower div classes, right? And then we have the 100s, right? Those are classes from 100 all the way to 199, right? Those are considered upper div classes, right? So for example, CS 111, CS 100, CS 171, right? And then we have classes that are 200 and beyond, right? 200 and beyond are usually considered graduate level courses, right? Yeah, that's pretty much the split up. It's a very simple split up, I think. It's not too complicated like some other colleges, but yeah. Does that kind of make sense as to how course numbers are made? Right? Obviously, the actual number given to the course may or may not have a relation to, perhaps the sequence it is in. But the main thing is really that leading digit in that 3-digit code. Yeah. Okay, cool. So on the next slide, you guys will see a link that takes us to the breadth requirements, right? This is a huge list of all the various breadth classes that you guys can take, right? And it will talk about, what are the humanity courses you guys need, social science, ethnicity, and depth courses, and kind of what are the different options you guys have. And if you guys notice, under that list, you guys will see a few classes that are repeating quite a few times within different sections, right? So what that means is if you were to take one class, you would be able to cover perhaps like a humanities A as well as an ethnicity, or perhaps like social science B and ethnicity, right? And there's quite a few of these, right? They aren't only like 1 or 2 per quarter, right? However, the problem with this is 2 things. One is time conflicts, right? A lot of times there's only the class being offered once throughout that quarter, and it has a very high chance of conflicting with another class. And the second thing is a lot of students are trying to take that class for the very same reason, right? So it's also very difficult to get. So that is something that you guys have to keep in mind when doing that. And since there are multiple courses, when you guys are taking, your breadth courses, try to take classes that interest you, right? It will make your classes much easier in regards to, perhaps like the content you're going to be learning, the assignments that you guys are going to be required to do. Otherwise, it's going to become a very tedious process to be able to finish that class and kind of enjoy that quarter, right? Yeah. Any questions there? Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at this link actually. Okay, so okay. Okay, yeah, so this link will take you here, and then if you guys click on the first link, this will take you to all the various breadth requirements that are required as a BCOE student, right? So this isn't a CS only thing. Anything under BCOE, you guys will be required to take these classes, right? And there is, the first page is just kind of a way for you to organize all the classes that you're gonna take. But once we come here, right, you guys can see the different sections, right? So first off, we have like English composition, where I think a lot of you guys may be taking English 1A and 1B. Obviously for English 1C, does anyone know why we don't need to take it? Yes. Yeah, so class you guys will have to take most likely your junior or senior year is going to be 180W. 180W is also a writing class that covers this class, right? And you'll notice there is actually an asterisk here, and that's simply because 180W right here, technical communications, is the required course rather than English 1C, right? So just make sure you guys aren't taking the same class twice, because it won't really do you any benefit if you do that. But after that, notice that humanities is split into 3 sections, humanities A, B, and C, and you need to take a course from each section, right? So for example, for humanities A, we only really have 3 options here, right? There's history 10, history 15, and history 20. And each of these just differs in like the time period, right? So perhaps you're really interested in, I don't know, like the 20th century, right? Obviously, I would recommend that you take the 20th century class rather than perhaps, you know, learning about prehistory to like 1500s, right? However, this is a very limited section, so there's not a lot of like double counting that you can do here. However, once you start getting into the bigger sections, such as like humanities B, here you have many, many more options, right? And you'll see, you know, there's tons of descriptions. And on the right-hand side, it'll also tell you the prerequisite for that class. Many times, you know, you may, usually there shouldn't be any prereqs, but sometimes it just requires upper division standing, right? And the reason it requires upper division standing is because this is actually a depth course as well, right? So notice how it starts with 100, right? And other times there may be like instructor approval. So for example, like here, you know, we have consent of instructor, things like that, right? And as we go on through the list, there will be a particular classes that you guys will notice that have a cross on them. For example, music 14 or like ethnic studies 14. Notice it has this cross right here, right? Popular musics of the world. If we scroll to the bottom of that page, also notice that music like 127 also has it, right? If we scroll to the bottom, notice that this cross means that the course fulfills humanity B and an ethnicity course. So this is an example of a class that we are able to knock out 2 requirements by taking 1 class, right? So that just saved you 1 class, and you can imagine if you do this like 3 times, you saved yourself essentially a quarter of classes that you need to take here. Yeah? Does that make sense for everyone? Any questions? Right? And this doesn't only apply to humanities, right? If we go on to the social sciences, right, there are also some classes in here that will also cover both. We just need to look for the cross. So here, anthropology 168 or like ethnic studies 148, once again has the cross. And if we go to the bottom of that list, we'll see that the cross represents, it fulfills social science B and an ethnicity course, right? And then as we go into like social science C, notice that there's actually quite a few that cover the ethnicity course as well, or ethnicity requirement, right? So definitely go through this list, kind of check out what different options you guys are interested in. And, you know, feel free to ask people who have taken these classes how they felt about the class, things like that, right? Because during these classes, it's a great way to kind of take a break from computer science and kind of just explore different concepts, either, you know, maybe social issues, or perhaps just history, economics, social science, things like that. Any questions? Yeah.
It's not a question, but I've also heard that there's like a fabled class that actually counts for 3 requirements at once.
Bill 124.
Yeah, I think that's but it's like impossible to get in because of that.
Yeah. So the class that he is talking about is Philosophy 124, if I can find it.
Okay.
Oh,
I think they might
Oh, never mind. Okay. Yeah, I remember that class too, because I remember there is one particular class where you guys are able to knock out 3 requirements. They may or may not have removed it or just renamed it to something else.
I think it's just 2.
Huh?
I think it's 2 requirements now. I think it's like just 2 requirements now.
Oh, okay, so they have removed it. Okay,
What
yeah.
did they remove? Like the ethnicity?
Huh?
What's the 3rd requirement?
There's also ETSC 106. That will do your depth. It will do your sociology C, and it will do your ethnicity requirement all once.
Oh, this one. Yeah, so this is 3 requirements then. Yeah, right. So social science C, depth, because notice it's a 106 class, so 100, meaning that it's upper div. And then since it has the cross, it is also an ethnicity course, right? So this is kind of like one of those, I guess, unicorn classes that you get to reduce your classes even more. Yeah. Keep in mind though, these classes are also very hard to get, right? So if you try to get them early on, either maybe like your freshman, sophomore year, that may be more difficult than trying to get them perhaps in your junior, senior years when you guys have priority registration, right? Because I'm pretty sure you guys have already noticed, if you guys have any like junior, senior friends, they are all maybe are in the process of registering or perhaps have already registered, right? And that's like 1 or 2 weeks before a lot of the freshmen and sophomores are going to be registered, right? So that's also something to keep in mind when taking these courses is check the availability, check if it's being offered, and if it is being offered, how many seats are left. Yeah. Any questions there or comments, concerns? No. Okay. Cool. With that being said, that's pretty much it for today's workshop. If nobody has any final questions, I guess just like a quick reminder for ACM. So remember that we do be ACM, which stands, we are the largest computer science organization on campus. Throughout the quarter and throughout the year, we host various workshops, events, socials, projects that you guys can all attend and be a part of. And if you guys have any questions or perhaps just want to learn more about the various events that we host, feel free to check out acm.cs.ucr.edu. And we do have like a calendar page that you guys can see when our next event is going to be. And if you guys haven't already, make sure you guys join our Discord server, because that's primarily where we are going to be posting a lot of up-to-date announcements regarding events, new opportunities, and also just a great way to be able to connect with other computer science students within UCR. And on top of that, we also do have a social tomorrow, I believe at 4 p.m. Let me pull it out real quick. Yeah, so a mentor-mentee social tomorrow. So how many of us have signed up for the BitBite program? Okay, cool. So quite a few of us, right? How many of us are mentors? Okay. Sick ass. So there is a mentor-mentee program for the Bit and Byte program tomorrow. It's going to be at UV. Does everyone know what UV is? What is it? Yes, University Village. And we're going to be meeting at UCR, but the primary focus is you guys will be able to meet with your mentors if you guys haven't already, and kind of just hang out with them, get to know them, and have fun. Yeah. So make sure you guys come out. It's going to be tomorrow, 4 to like 6 p.m. And yeah, ask your mentors for more information if you guys have questions about it. But yeah, with that being said, that's pretty much it for today. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything? No? Okay, cool. If you guys want me to look over your course plans to perhaps recommend like certain ways to kind of attack your course plan and maybe your current schedule for next quarter, let me know. I'm open to checking that out. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. I will see you guys next week.